I was abandoned as a baby and some would say left to die. I felt it was my fault. It's really hard for me to talk about it. So sport was my saviour and I started doing well.
Britain's most consistent javelin thrower ever, Fatima Whitbread.
I held the 2 longest throws in the history of the event. I had a world record and I had the gold medal.
A new world record by a massive margin.
11 major medals in different championships. And then suddenly I have to be confronted with my own story. In the paper, they'd given a picture of me in a frame to the biological mum. She was holding up the picture saying, I want my blood daughter back. That's what brought my career to an end because I had a breakdown. Suddenly I realised, blimey, it's a lot to process. You know, we're all sentient beings. We're all going to experience trauma. It's really how we deal with it. I like challenges. I like survival. I like SAS. I like I'm a celeb. They're my kind of things. It's about putting yourself to the test. You learn so much more about who you are and what you're capable of. People say to me, would you ever change anything? And I'd say, maybe a couple of things, but otherwise no, because the fact is, who and what I've become is now something that is influencing for our young people ultimately through Fatima's UK campaign, making that difference that what our children need.
You were saying just before we dived in, running 12 miles this morning and you're going to the Pyrenees, right?
I'm going to the Pyrenees. That's my latest challenge. I just came back 5-6 weeks ago from the Everest base camp. And this one is all about the Pyrenees. So from the Bay of Biscay, from France to Spain and back again along the coastal. It should be quite lovely views and great experience. It's better than climbing a mountain. I've done those for the last 2 years. And I'm a long distance marathon walker as well. 14-minute mile pacing for walking. But my best time for a marathon is 3:28. Sounds quite fast.
You're faster than me at the moment. I've done 2 marathons. I did the Edinburgh Marathon, I did the Newcastle Gateshead one, and I'm a little bit slower at the moment. When you get to mile 18, all of a sudden you start hitting that wall.
You're still a young baby yet, Pete. You'll be fine. What's great about all these marathons and challenges is that it actually is peaceful. I love it because it gives me a chance to be creative and think about it. All the things that I'm doing, ideas that will come to me during the course of the challenge. It's a chance to switch off as well a little bit. I'm looking forward to it. I've enjoyed my challenges, and that's all part of the preparation of building a foundation to support these young people. It creates an awareness and educates people about what's going on with our children in the care system.
And the care system, I think, is probably a great place to start, because to people that know your athletics prowess and also know of your time on TV and I'm a Celebrity, they maybe aren't as aware in respect to the early years. And having read your book Survivor, I was blown away by the experiences that you went through. I guess for those tuning in now, maybe if we start by sharing a little bit more about those early years and equally some of the realities and challenges faced.
Yeah, obviously I was abandoned as a baby and some would say left to die. A neighbour heard a baby crying and hadn't seen anybody coming or going in a couple of days to the flat. And she then called the police who banged the door down and rescued the baby, which was myself. And then I spent the next 7 months recovering from malnutrition and nappy rash. Pleased to say I got over the nappy rash. And then, of course, during that 7 months, I was made a ward of court by Hackney Borough Council, of which I then spent the next 14 years of my life in children's homes. And it's pretty tough. Back in the 60s, children's homes were more institutions than today. They're like more residentials, they're 1-to-1. But back then we had the first children's home we had was 20 children, which is from 0 to 5-year-olds. And we had what we called house matrons. So everything was perfunctory. It was all about getting the children up in mass, getting them bathed, getting them fed, walk them. I think we walked a mile a day, which was quite interesting. Kept the kids quiet and happy, kept them well fed. Children in care back then was completely different to what it is now. And I think that in many respects, the care system hasn't changed with regard to the government at the top level. There's an awful lot that still needs to be changed, and decision makers listening to our young people, what they've got to say, so they can become more visible, and also their emotional needs being met. The system's broken, and we currently have 110,000 kids in the care system, and we've got a shortage of 10,000 foster carers, and that's predicted to go up in 26,000 in 2026. We really are looking at our young people and their life outcomes, are really struggling, huge challenges that they have. We want to make sure that they have a happier and healthier life, happier lives, better communities, and a nicer kind of society. Because, like I always say, that children are our future, and early intervention is really important, because who and what they become will decide what society ends up. We need to look out for our future generations of kids as well. We all have that moral and ethical responsibility. We need to look at what can we do, what more can we do to support these young people moving forward.
You're clearly playing such a positive role for many generations, and it draws me into another person that played a positive role in your upbringing, and that's the amazing Auntie Ray. Can you tell me a little bit more about the relationship with Auntie Ray and how she influenced you in those core early years?
For me, when I was living in care, I had a good auntie called Auntie Ray. She was my role model and all the children's role models. I called her the tickle monster because I used to wait in bed when she was on duty in the mornings, and not until she's tickled me did I feel that my day started out properly. So that for me was so important. And we just knew that, all us kids knew that Auntie Ray understood us. She just got us. And I can remember one day running up top of the staircase and looking out the window, and I'd follow her clip-clopping down the road, and I think, where does she live? And she got to the end of the road and I could see her living up. That's where she lives, on the corner there. I must have been about 10 years old, and I gathered all these daffodils from all over, which was a bit naughty, but I picked these daffodils because I just had it in my mind. I wanted to go down and knock on Auntie Ray's door. And then when she opened it, I said, will you be my mummy? And I held the flowers out to her. She said, let's talk about this. She said, come round the back. And I thought, I'm being in trouble now for picking these daffodils. But she sat me in the kitchen and she gave me a cup of tea. And she said, I can't just be your mum. She said, I have to be mummy to all those children. She said, but here's the thing. She said, I'm not always there, but you are. She said, so why don't you be there, mummy? And I always say to this day, it taught me some really important lessons. The first one was altruism. In giving, you receive. And making sure I stepped up to call out any injustice that were going on for these young children, and to give them the love, the cuddles, the playfulness that we did, the pillow fights, the bouncing on the beds, the trampolines, and all the things that kids do, to matchstick men on the steamed up windows in the morning, and just being there for them. It brought a sense of warmth, love and security to the children, and they gave that back. And the other thing it did for me, it swiveled the lens so that I wasn't trapped in my own head, which a lot of young kids are. When they come into care through no fault of their own, they've got a lot of trauma and a lot of triggers. And the fact is that they can't process things as well as youngsters as they would as they're getting older. Nobody actually sits them down and discusses anything with them, so it's really hard for them. They're stuck turning over the same narrative in their head. What have I done? What did I do wrong? Why is my mummy not here? Have I been naughty? All these things, what's going to happen to me? The fear of not knowing. They're constantly turning over in a child's mind. Makes it very difficult for them to move beyond a certain place of emotion. So there's always that sea of emotional turbulence. And anybody else that lives within that environment, you're feeling it all the time. Kids are crying themselves to sleep, asking where mummy is. That's a pretty tough existence for a child. So for me, in being a mum and stepping up and giving those children the love and support that they needed, in that being returned to me, gave me the ability to look outward and not be trapped within my own head, and also feeling victimised by my circumstances. It helped me greatly. And I always say to this day, I'll always remember that I have the ability to see other people's plights in life and not be trapped in my own trauma or my own existence of doom and gloom and what's going to happen.
And you talk about trauma, and sadly, a lot of people within the care system a lot face the realities of trauma, and your experience is very much akin to that. When I read your book Survivor, you recount a harrowing experience about your birth mother. So the thing that I'm interested to explore there is, how did you find the strength to overcome such a traumatic event?
I always find that children in the care system will have traumas, and even people that don't live in the care system. The fact that we're all sentient beings, we're all going to experience trauma at one time or another. It's really how we deal with it. And it's very real to each and every one of us. And I always say that when you reach a certain age, it's our responsibility to do the healing work. So we have to learn to know how to deal with past traumas, which future events that inform past traumas. And it triggers you. So in doing that, you've got to know how to deal with that. And for me, it's very simple, really, that I always say I may have left the care system, but the care system hasn't left me. And I always have to work on dealing with that on a daily basis. Everybody has trauma and triggers throughout their lives. Better to learn how to deal with it. And I always do lots of meditational stuff. I do affirmations. I like to do artwork. I like cooking. I like gardening. There's many things that you can do. And ultimately, I like helping others too. I think that's a really important, valuable attribute to have, because you learn a lot more about yourself. It's about self-growth and moving past the narrative of living an existence about just yourself and what's happening in your life, and experiencing what's going on in other people's, and that experience is teaching you some good lessons. It's all about embracing those lessons and learning self-growth, really. While I share my story, and I've been sharing my story for years in a way, but more so now because this is my ministry to help other children, it is empowering. It brings it to life for people to understand. It's so important to create that platform of awareness to educate people's understanding about what these young children and young people go through and the impact of that on their life. And as a child, my inner strength was always through my childhood experiences. But on this particular occasion, Auntie Ray, I remember that the social workers wanted to integrate the family, bring us back together. And lots of things happened leading up to this event. Unfortunately, Auntie Ray felt that it wasn't a good visit from the biological mum. She brought a couple of gentlemen down with her that looked like pimps. And she felt that this was not a good situation to send me into. But the authorities told her that they wanted me to go back and be integrated into the family. And of course, unfortunately, I was sexually abused by the mother's lover at knife point during that visit. And of course, that makes a big impact on a child's life. When a child goes through that kind of experience, anybody, it's hugely difficult to explain what goes on in a child's mind. But for me, it was all about, I felt it was my fault. Lots of different things in this area. Sport was my saviour. For me in my early days, it was always about sport. I can remember watching the Munich Olympics at 11 years old, and I realised at 16 I was going to be moving into independent living, because 16 was the age then, not 18 today. And I was always being told you'll amount to nothing, you'll end up on the streets. I think a lot of that was to do with some of the house parents that were looking after the children. It was just a job to them. They didn't have the sensitivity or the know how to look after young kids in the care system. We were just a number. But to be spoken to and spoken at like that all the time, it doesn't foster good well-being for these children. Children need good role models. They need encouragement. They need hope. They need the possibility of something coming good for them in their lives. It's quite bleak. They can't see beyond a certain area. For me, I was very lucky because sport is something that I love to do. It's sense of freedom. I can remember playing in a netball match at school. It was a very tight match. It was going 11-11, 12-11, 12 all. And I was raising my voice and the umpire blew the whistle and said, "Young lady, you keep that noise down, otherwise you'll be off." I looked over and I muttered to myself, I don't get me wrong, today they would call us motivators, but back then we were like pain in the ass. But I kept motivating my team as the captain, and the whistle went again. The referee said, "I've told you once before, I'll send you off if you keep it up." I just mumbled under my voice as I turned around, and the team captain said of the opposite team, "Fats, don't, she's really strict. She'll definitely send you off." At the end of that game, we won. It was great. I could give the medal to Auntie Ray, because I'd always promised Auntie Ray if I was to win this tournament, we'll get a medal, and it would be nice to give it to her because she was the mum I always wanted. So Auntie Ray taught me a lesson about that as well, actually, because Auntie Ray told me that don't you worry about medals at this stage. You just get out there and enjoy playing the game, and you've got to win it first before you get your medal. So even when I was competing, I could hear Auntie Ray's voice in my ears when I went to the Olympics or World Championships. Never did I ever put a medal around my neck before I actually won it, because at the end of the day, you've got to keep focus and concentrate on what's going on around you. And there's no point if you're thinking, oh, somebody's just thrown a massive throw and it's gone past anything that I've ever done. Am I likely to do anything better than that? Yeah, you're in the wrong game if you're doing that. At the end of that tournament, I remember saying to my friend Alma, who lived in the home around the corner, I said, Alma, why don't we go to the local track where it's athletic season and we can both go to the local athletic track and see what there is. And of course we did. We walked the 5 miles it took us to get to the track, probably pocketed the money and spent it on sweets or something, or Woodbine cigarettes back in the day. And I can remember when I got to the track gates, Alma saw the sprinters and she went after the sprinters. And I saw this very tall, blonde, good-looking fella throwing what looked like a spear. I thought, oh, he looks interesting. I'll go over there. And of course, when I got over there, I saw the javelins were on the ground, and I went to pick one up, and he said, "You're not allowed to do that." I said, "Why?" So he turned to the shot put coach, Jack Winnie, and he said, "Oh, no, young lady, you'll have to wait for the javelin coach to come over." And he said, "Let's go and sit in the stand and wait for the javelin coach." So I thought, as most kids in the care system are quite feisty because they're used to fighting for their rights. Yeah. And I sat in the stand waiting, toe tapping, and I said, "Where's this coach then?" And he said, "Oh, no, not to worry, she'll be here soon." This Minnie pulled up into the car park. And as I looked across the infield estate, this person walked across and went, "Oh, no, it's that same woman on the netball court." And that's where I thought, oh, my God, what are the chances? This same umpire who told me off. As she approached Jack said, "This is Whitbread." He said, "I've got this young lady. I know who she is," before he even said my name. He said, "You're Fatima." She said, "Well, let me tell you, young lady, any of that cheek you showed on the netball court, there won't be any throwing javelins here." So I said, "No, I promise you I'll behave." And it's really quite funny, really, because as the weeks went by, she would say, "Oh, you've got a bit of talent." She said, "Why don't you ask Mum and Dad to come up and we can talk about getting a javelin and some boots and get you into a competition program?" So I just nodded my head a few times. And then she said, "Jack," she said, "has Fatima got a hearing problem?" "No, why is that?" I said, "Every time I ask her about Mum and Dad, she just nods her head." "Oh," he said, "don't, she's one of the kids from the children's homes." But with that, Mum, what she did is the following week, she bought a pair of boots and a javelin. She threw the boots down and said, "These boots are probably 2 sizes too big." She said, "I've had a young girl who's retired," she said, "and here are the boots." She said, "Stuff them with paper and here's the javelin." Well, of course, I was made up with somebody actually giving me something in the first place, let alone a javelin and boots. I decided that evening I'd go back on the bus, and the bus driver was like, "No, you can't get on board." And I would point the javelin and say, "Yes, I am." And he'd say, "Go on, get on the back of the bus and behave." And I wanted to get back to the children's home quickly because we had German students in the summer that would look after us, and the house auntie and uncle would be off on holiday. And some of the kids that were there, they were the long-stay kids, the ones that didn't have anywhere to go, didn't have parents or weren't able to get home for one reason or another. We had the German student Ingrid, and I said to her, "Come out, Ingrid, into the garden." I said, "Let me show you how I throw this javelin." And of course, it took me a couple of throws to get it up to the garden. And then I turned around and said, "Now move out the way, I'll give it a really big throw this time." I did, and it went smash through the French windows. And yeah, it's quite funny because Ingrid's standing there with her head in her hands. And, "You'll be in trouble." And I said, "Yeah, that's you," laughing. I said, "I'll tell you what, stick it with sellotape." I said, "They won't know." "Yes, they will," she said. Anyway, we stuck it with tape, but of course, when they got back, I got a month's ban. After school activities all went out the window, which was a bit tough. And also, I used to like to visit Auntie Ray on the way home from school if she was off duty. Sit, have a cup of tea and a biscuit and chat away with her. Yeah, as a few weeks went by, I got a message back from the other school, team captain of the netball team. Mrs. Whitbread thinks you're bumped off with the javelin and the boots. You're not interested anymore. You've sold them. And I thought, oh, I can't have that. I got up about 2:00 one morning and I crept downstairs into the front room where their French bureau was, and I pulled out an airmail envelope and I started writing on it, "Dear Mrs. Whitbread, sorry I can't come to the track. I smashed the French windows, but one day I want to be the best javelin thrower in the world." And so I stuck it down and I put Mrs. Whitbread in the Chad school. And the next morning I hid it under my arm as we went out the door and posted it through the box on the way to school. And I didn't hear anything for a few weeks, and I thought she couldn't have got it. And then all of a sudden I heard the telephone ring, and I pressed my ear to the glass window, and I heard the house auntie saying, "No, she can't come. She's been naughty. She's not allowed. She's not allowed out." Mrs. Whitbread must have been quite persistent, because within less than a week, I was back at the track trying my javelin. And then she asked me, "Would you like to come and have tea with the family?" And I said, "Yeah, that would be nice." So I went and met the family. I met Mr. Whitbread and the two sons, Greg, who was 4, and Kirk, who was 2. We got on very well. And then, of course, within a couple of weeks, Mrs. Whitbread said, "It's summer holidays." She said, "Would you like to come and stay with us for a couple of weeks?" And I hesitated. It's most kids that are very aware that they get let down tremendously. Lots of different things all the time happen in the care system at times, and both families letting kids down one way or another. So there's always this, I'm not so sure, build up these walls of security kids do around you so they don't get hurt. And I said to her, "I'm not sure if I would be able to do that." Largely due to also the fact that I knew that the kids that I was their parent, and I took my job really seriously. So Auntie Ray said to me, "Look, Tats, you've always wanted to know what it's like to go, what it's like at a family. Go," she said, "and experience it." And of course I did, and it was good. 2 weeks with the Whitbreads. And the funny thing was that at the end of that, Greg, the elder boy, 4, said, "Mummy," said, "do we have to take Fatima back to the shop?" I laughed. We all laughed. And then on the way back, Mrs. Whitbread taking me back to the children's home, she said, "We've been thinking, we don't know what you would think about this." She said, "We'd like you to be a Whitbread. Come and live with us and be a Whitbread." Yeah, so that was an amazing happening in my life, which I never thought would ever would happen, And for me, it was, I guess I was one of the lucky ones, because, as I say, 14 years is a long time to be institutionalised in the care system. Back then, especially, because it is like more an institutionalisation, whereas today we have residentials, are much smaller, 4 people to a home, and you usually got 1-to-1. They're pretty well run, most of them. Not all of them are functioning well. Some that have their problems which aren't serving the kids, so we need to work on that. And there's a lot of work to be done. In fact, the UK campaign plans to do just that, so we can deliver a change to our young people. We can rejuvenate the care system by bringing the 4 nations together in shared practice and knowledge, and we can influence the decision makers so they can listen to what the children's needs are, and ultimately serve the ground floor level by collaboration and partnerships to improve the service that they provide on the ground floor level for our kids. Because growth, success starts at the ground floor level. It's not going to come from the top down, and we can all work together and improve the outcomes of our children, build proper foundation for them, and hopefully they'll be able to live a meaningful life independently, properly independent, and not as what currently is going on, which is kids, and I always say this, if the kid is at the top of the cliff, what do you want, a fence at the top of the cliff or an ambulance at the bottom? Because we've got to start to recognise that the system is broken, it's not working, and we need to bring in private companies as well to help skill up our young people, learn about traumas and triggers. A lot more companies now are looking at employing these young people because they've got an amazing resilience, which a lot of young people in conventional homes don't have. And the ability and attributes that they have, these young people, they learn how to read a room, learn how to know what the energy is, thinking off their feet. These are all the things that young people have to do who live in the care system, where most conventional kids are living in the security of mum and dad helping them circumnavigate and cotton wool around them as well. Well, if that doesn't happen with young people, there are massive challenges.
As you said, a lot of people do become institutionalized as well. The loss of hope, the building up barriers in respect to protection and not wanting to be let down. Like you were one of the lucky ones in that respect when the Whitbreads adopted you, and then subsequently the career that followed. It's lovely to hear those types of stories that through hope and opportunities and those sliding door moments.
Well, it's fate, really, isn't it? At the end of the day, fate played a big role, and our paths crossing, it was through sport that happened. But like all families, you have to work at it. There is no difference in learning to live in a family. We all have our problems, and I was under no expectation. I didn't expect it to be all roses in the garden, as they say. For me, being one of the lucky ones means that it's, as I said, my childhood primary care years has not left me. There's still a lot of trauma and triggers that I have, but I just do the healing work. I learn on a daily basis how to deal with that, things that come along and trigger me all the time. It's about me wanting to turn back and help those other young people. And that's my ministry today through Fatima's UK campaign. And that's my legacy that I want to leave for young children in future generations to come. We cannot leave the care system as it is. It needs properly regulating once the summit's been and gone. But it's about facilitating partnerships together and making sure that people speak to one another, because currently they work in silos. They don't do that. It's important to have the very best of what we can to serve our children and help them in moving forward in their lives, from early intervention through the care system and through coming out the care system, bridging that gap from 18 to 25 into young adulthood. It is a multifaceted area. We're talking about social workers, we're talking about mental health. 27% of our young people by the time they're 14 they have mental health issues. We're talking about areas that education, putting in programs in place, so therefore they're in a safe place of haven, so they're not going to be targeted, groomed, and our young girls sexually abused because they're vulnerable.
And we will get to that campaigning for change bit a little later, but just to continue the story of your athletics career, you went on to achieve leaps and bounds in respect to the medals won, the championships attended, and equally the world records broken. Can you tell me a little bit more about the moment when you broke the world record and what it meant to you at that time?
Sport was my saviour. I loved all sport. I just didn't do track and field. I also played county hockey. I was the youngest ever player to play county hockey in Essex. When they learnt my age, they dropped me from the first team, which was annoying. And I also got a contract offered for golf back in the early 70s. They offered me $60,000 a year to play golf. But because I'd only just been adopted into the Whitbread family, I didn't really want to leave, so that wasn't an option. I also won a Winston Churchill scholarship, which gave me the opportunity to travel to America to learn about track and field. Both my mother and I went there. And then they offered me a scholarship at UCLA, and I would have loved to have taken it up, but I was just not in the right place at that moment in time. My athletic career came quickly because I worked exceptionally hard. From the age of 13, I knew I wanted to be an athlete, 11 actually. And at 13, I started training, and then it just went on year in, year out. I improved every year. And then I became a full international at the age of 16. I always used to say to my mum, because she'd say, "Oh, you don't have to worry about that. It's a lot of hard work." And I'd say, "No, that's what I want to do. I love sport and I want to do it." And of course, I carried on working at it, and each year went by, I improved. And at 19, I was a European junior champion. I went to Bydgoszcz in Poland, and I became the first female or male athlete to win a junior throws European title. And again, as the years went on, I made Moscow in 1980. So in 79 was the European Junior Championships, and in 1980 I made the Olympic team in Moscow, which was a good experience. And then in 81, I did the Europa Cup and won that. In 82, went to the Commonwealth Games in Brisbane. I have probably it's 11 major medals in different championships, which is a lot. And to then, in 1986, arrive in Stuttgart in the qualifying rounds, break the world record to qualify for the final. Everybody said, "Oh, look, nobody's ever broken a world record in a qualifying round and gone back the next day and won a championships in any event." So I said, "Oh, see, watch me then." I said, because I love challenges, me. And of course I did. And I was only yet to be beaten by the distance that I'd thrown the day before. So I held the 2 longest throws in the history of the event. I had a world record and I had the gold medal. And that was an amazing coming of age for at senior level. And then, of course, in 1987, I became Britain's sole gold medalist for the World Championships in Rome. And in doing so, I also won the World Athlete of the Year, Press Association Athlete of the Year, and the Athletics Writers Athlete of the Year. ITV then had an award called the Panasonic Award, so I won the ITV award, and then I won the BBC Sports Personality of the Year, and then to top it all, my precious honour of the MBE, which was awarded to me by the late Queen. Again, when I look back, I look at that 3-year-old Fatima in the care system, and I say, "Do you think that would have ever happened?" I would have said, "No, I would never have believed it." But at the same time, when I look at her every day in the mirror, I'll say, "I've got you, don't you worry, I'm going to look after you." Because it is important that we take care of ourselves, our mental health and the way we feel, because everybody suffers some form or another. And just by being a human being, I'm always grateful to say thank you for the life that I have, the roof over my head, the food on the table, and that I'm able to provide for my son. And I was able to bring him up and do the best I can for him. Now he's on his way. Yeah, I've got a lot to be grateful for with my family. I look after my family as well. My mum's 84 now. She's a wonderful lady. She's had a lot of problems. She went for years undiagnosed bipolar. And yes, she's had her problems, but we've been working really well together and looking after her. And she's extremely proud of me, obviously, to be doing what I'm doing with Fatima's UK campaign in helping other young children too. So I'm just hoping that she'll still be around to see the summit next year in April, and share that wonderful experience of bringing change and making a difference to our young people's lives, because we want to hold people to account to keep and regulate the children's care system, to keep on improving the service they provide, and to make sure ministers change policies that are not serving our young people, and implement those that needs that our young people, where decisions are being made, are being heard for what their requirements are.
Yeah, definitely. I guess pivoting back to your athletics career, everybody talks so fondly of you as an athlete, of what you achieved back in that time. The injury came in the 90s, and having read your book Survivor, there was a number of different prejudices, poverty, heartbreak, and which occurred. How did you navigate through those difficult times that came after the peak of what you achieved during your athletics career?
Sport, as I've always said, was my saviour. And when I started my international career and I started doing well, I can always remember the Mirror paper brought a picture to me, and what it was, they bought the paper, and in the paper, the picture was that they'd given a picture of me in a frame to the biological mum, and she was holding up the picture saying, "I want my black daughter back." And I can remember once I started doing well, my late husband said to me, look, you'll have to write your life story, because if you don't, the media are doing it, because it was becoming knowledge that I was from the care system and I'd been brought up in children's homes. And I remember this lady was the same lady that, unfortunately, I was raped by the mother's lover at knife point, which she held. At the end of the day, my experience has only ever been awful experiences that I've had with the biological mum. So to see that in the paper at a time when I should be jubilant about celebrating my successes and victories with my family was upsetting, because my mum, Margaret, she was upset about that, to see it. And having to be forced to write your own life story is not something that I envy. People that have been brought up in care, even today, some of them do not want to talk about it. They feel shamed by it, which they shouldn't be, because it's no fault their own that they ended up in the care system, and the adversity that they go through is not their own fault. But with me telling my story, what I've learned is that it's empowered others to share theirs too and not be ashamed. And now suddenly you're finding a whole lot more people coming out speaking about that. And I think that can only be a good thing, because it's good for the soul, and it's also helps others to heal as well, to share that. It's empowering for our people to understand what these youngsters go through in their lifetime.
Yeah, it must have been difficult, and I can only empathise in respect to the realities of that. It's very intrusive into your life, especially at the time when you were achieving such peaks, to be forced to have to write your own life story.
That's what brought me to, what brought my career to an end, because I had a breakdown having to write the book in 87 after the World Championships. Then I was trying to prepare for 88 Seoul Olympics, and then to try and get a book out and get the book done so that it came out for the Olympics. All the pressure of trying to produce this and going through and actually facing what I'd been through. Suddenly I realised, it's a lot to process in, and also suddenly realising what my life was. The new expectation and pressures as well with my athletic career, learning to deal with the world's media, and also being publicly known and not even being able to pop out to the local shops. I did do it, but it was emotionally draining, because I loved the people. They wanted to support me, and those same people are still very supportive today. I'd like to think I handle it very sensitively, in a nice way, because some people are just far removed from it and they can't handle the pressure and the media or the public. And I think that the public have been really kind and supportive to me over the years, so I make the time for them. But there are days when everybody gets up and they probably don't want that. When you're at your peak of your career, it's like a big fish in a small tank. There's not enough space to get away from things. And that added to the pressure of trying to write the book as well. That combination was quite a force to be reckoned with, in dealing with it for a young girl who particularly just not long been out the care system, learning to live in a new family environment, learning to deal with the pressures of success, and then suddenly have to be confronted with my own story. Yeah, no wonder. I remember having the breakdown, and I was still trying to train. I wanted to get to the Olympics, and I was performing so erratically. 1 minute throwing 70 metres, the next minute throwing 40 metres, and no 2 days were the same. I was terribly procrastination, and my physical ability as well was, felt like I was walking on cobbled stone all the time. There was a lot of things that I went through, and I'm not afraid to say it, because these things happened. For me, I managed to get through the winter, approaching the UK Championships, and I qualified for the Olympics. And I threw 75 metres out there, actually. And I thought, wow, that's pretty good going from where I'd come from. I was quite amazed. And I thought, suddenly thought, should I go? Should I? And I thought, why not give it a go? Call on all your reserves. You're still pretty fit. You're doing training, and your mind's, if you allow yourself Call on all your reserves. There's no reason why you can't pull yourself through that. And I did do it. I came away with a silver medal. And actually, the distance that I threw over 70 would have won any Olympic Games prior to that Olympic Games. But because I was competing against Petra Falker from East Germany, who I'd broken her world record and taken her gold medal from her in the European Championships in 86 and beaten her in 87 in the World Championships. She threw 72, I think it was. So, yeah, we were very close, less than a javelin's length between us. And the rest were about 11 metres behind us. But actually, Petra Falker and I hold all the stadium records all around the world. Had they not changed the women's javelin, which they didn't need to, because they changed the men's javelin, I understood that. It was going all over the place. People were throwing big distances. If you were sitting at the other end watching in the stand, the high jump, you could see this javelin hurtling along down towards you. You would be a bit worried. And also the men tend to hook it left or right out the sector. So it could go onto the track where the athletes were running around. So you'd have the grass-edged verge and the javelin would come in and the runners would be running past. Understandable why they changed the men, but the women, no. I actually staged a protest against the change and all the women around the world did sign it. And the guy who was the IAAF technical delegate from Ireland, he said, that's not going to work. He said, unfortunately, he said, I agree with you. He said, but they make a lot of money. So selling these javelins to stadiums and schools all around the world, someone was getting a little backhander to do it, which is appalling because you spend your whole life working towards creating evolution in that way, throwing the distances that don't come easy, the hard work that goes into it. For somebody just to say, oh yeah, let's change the javelin. Like they do when you watch the men's 100 now in any major championships. One false start and they've gone. What's that all about? When you look at that, they should at least have two. It's awful. You reach that level and you've gone. Someone twitches next to you and it automatically sends somebody else off.
The amount of training as well that goes into it, it's insane.
Huge amount of training going into it. And an Olympics is only once every 4 years. They're at that point in their career that they're finely tuned to winning and boom, it's gone. They've got to wait another 4 years. It could be that they're over the top or they get injured before they get there. Or there's just a huge amount of work again to go into it. We don't mind, athletes don't mind. When you're trying, that's your career, that's what you do. But I do mind when I think people are dismissive and they make the rules and regulations without taking the athletes' concerns into consideration.
Yeah, definitely. I was watching the Olympics earlier and that lady from Great Britain doing the clay pigeon shoot and she shot it and that was ridiculous. She ended up with a silver even though she got the same.
Well, she should have been the gold. Yeah, she should have been the gold medal. It would have put more pressure on the other girl. It was just ridiculous. Suddenly for them just to be dismissive and not even have it go to an independent inquiry. Even in athletics, they have independent inquiries and they have rewinds and they time for the 100th of a second. So that'll be a lesson they learn and that'll be the reason why next Olympics they probably will have it.
She was incredible because she had just had a baby as well before.
Yeah, I thought she was magnificent.
Really, she took it with a lot of grace. And I think that equally that's an inspiration to see as well.
Could have lost it, but she didn't, did she? I think she'll be bitterly disappointed. Had she not seen her baby at that time, she may have continued that conversation. But when she knew the baby was there, it went out the window, which it doesn't it?
It was nice to see. I think from people watching on, it can take a lot from that grace that she
puts it in perspective. That is it. And the Olympics it's all about solidarity, respect and family. It's about friendships, building friendships in the village, competitiveness. You can even, that old saying, respect your rivals, your enemies. It's all about this day and age when you were seeing what we're seeing out there with all the riots that are going on. I have to say I'm one of them that always believed this was going to happen because it couldn't stay the way it was going on. I call it anarchy, to be fair. I saw this coming a long time ago. But within a sport like the Olympics, it's all about breaking those barriers down. It's about building that solidarity. It's about building respect and friendships. And that's what it's all about in terms of trying to create, in Fatima's campaign, opportunities for people to build a better life and a better future for themselves, and hope that everybody will pull together and support these young people and young children.
Yeah, definitely. That solidarity that you talk about and then taking on challenge, it has to draw me into I'm a Celeb. So obviously after your athletics career, another generation came to know who Fatima really is and diving into there, and everybody's seen the clip of the cockroach and such. But firstly, what inspired you to take on that particular challenge, and what was the actual experience like?
I've always wanted to do I'm a Celeb. From when it first started, that's the sort of thing I like to do. I like challenges, I like survival, I like SAS, I'm a Celeb. They're my kind of things. If I'd had the chance to do Win Hoff's program as well, I would have loved to have done that too. For me, it's about putting yourself to the test. What I like about it is that you find what your limitations are, and you learn so much more about who you are and what you're capable of. It's not just about the actual challenge. It's learning to see the dynamics between people when you're thrown together in an environment like the extremities of what you go through, stripped back from all home comforts, no phones, no watches to know what the time is and think about what's still going on at home. You can't talk to family, you can't walk out the jungle camp, and anybody that comes into camp, they have to cover over their watches. You're not allowed to make no conversation if they change your batteries in your microphones. Yes, so it's interesting. For me, it was long periods at times where it could have been quite boring when you're not doing anything or participating in any of the challenges. But people are getting sassy and tired and emotional because they're not eating, missing home. And then, of course, you get your head stuck in a casket and you might have, like I say, 8,000 cockroaches dropping into the head casket, and one goes up your nose. What do you do? Whitbread just stood it at the pressure of all time. It was interesting because there was a chain, and if you pulled the chain and released the helmet, it would all have fallen out. But that wouldn't have changed the situation that I was in. So there was no point in me pulling the chain and then basically rendering myself out of it, losing the battle to stay in. I'm a Celeb. So I decided I would wait until the minute's up and then we'd try and get it out quick. But it was stuck behind the bridge of the nose. It wasn't just in the nose. That would have been easy. But he was holding on with his little furry legs right behind here, in there. And it was like someone was shaking up a fizzy drink and it was exploding. And it was making me feel nauseous. 3 solutions of saline water from Dr. Bob. It took 40 minutes before that little devil came out. Yeah, so editing was, they edited the program. That clip was, I think they only showed a couple of minutes of it, but it was 40 minutes. And when I think about it, that's a hell of a long time. When you think, where's this thing going to come out? I said to the doctor, where do you think this thing's going to come out? They said it can come out of 4 different places. I said, 4 places? Yeah, he said, come out from the nose where it went up. He said, come out your mouth, come out your ears, or out your eyes. And I said, you're kidding me. Lucky for me, it came back out my nose. And it hit the ground running like Usain Bolt and then keeled over. So I put him in a little plastic bottle and brought him home. In fact, the British Museum put him in resin. And most of the children, when I go around the schools, I do keynote speaking a lot. And most of the kids want to know where the cockroach is. They love the cockroach. And I guess this is my 4th generation, the people knowing who I am and what I'm doing. And I always used to talk when I went to the schools to say, you may not know who I am, but your mums and dads will remember me as an athlete. And now I have to say nans and granddad. That's the intergeneration change, the longevity. It's interesting. I do like my challenges. And I like I said, I did SAS. I enjoyed that too. The gas chamber was a tough one. They make you run across the Jordan Desert 5 kilometers with the mask over your face. And that in itself, with a 40-degree heat, is quite tough. And whenever you get to the end of your run, you have a challenge to do. And that day when we did the gas one, everyone was spewing up everywhere. Saliva coming out, mucus. I remember when they threw me out, I got through it and they threw me out the window. Foxy said to me, "What, you've been brought up on gas?" And I just laughed. Yeah, it was funny. I was like everybody. I loved the challenge. I was brought up in a tough existence, and my athletic career was also built on hard work. I trained 3 times a day, 7 days a week. I'd have only 2 weeks a year off. I'd train in all weathers. I'd sprint with the sprinters. I'd do the weight training 5 days a week in the base of a shed, basically, with a Kayla gas bottle. None of these fancy gyms you see now. And yeah, I went through an era again. It's pretty much of a trailblazer as a woman working and having muscles, which no one ever had back then, or shouldn't have had. It was all Bo Derek kind of model looks. And I said, well, yeah, I might not be Bo Derek, but Bo Derek can't throw a javelin either, can she? I don't know. It's maybe it was also women shouldn't have the same pay as the men. And I said, well, why not? If I'm a world champion, a world record holder, why wouldn't I be paid the same amount? Because we're Cinderella events. And I said, I'm not Cinderella, am I? I said, I'm a world champion. So I fought really hard to get equal pay for women, and we did it. I did it. And yeah, it was a tough era because it was also Eastern Bloc time, behind the Iron Curtain. And most of the power events, the throws and the jumps, and that was all mostly East Germany or Russia, or they always wanted to prove to the third world that they were better than anybody else. And we had to work that much harder to beat them. For me, it was all about that. I loved working hard. I loved the challenge of it. It's like sponge to water. So the harder it is, the better it is for me. I want to do it. I want to show you I can do it. And please tell me I can't do it, and I'll show you I can do it. That's the way I've been, because living in care, what's made me like.
And it hasn't stopped now in respect to Fatima's campaign.
Yeah, no.
The work that you do today, I guess there's 2 parts to this. Firstly, how do your kids look upon the journey that you've been through and the work that you're doing today? And then equally, what would be the biggest challenge you envisage facing the care system today, and how may you go about addressing it?
This is my ministry today, and using my lived experience and my Olympic platform to relate and emphasize to the public, to bring a bigger awareness, a wider awareness of what these children go through and what we need to do and how we can best improve the outcomes for these young kids. And with my challenges, that's another reason how I can build that platform. And I've got a book coming out on October the 24th. It's called My Bright Shining Star. It's about a young Fatima in the care system, 3 to 11-year-old book. You can pre-order it now. It comes out on the 24th of October. And it's all about my life, actually, in children growing up in care. It's a book that's colourful, good illustrations, and nice text. And all the proceeds will go to Fatima's UK campaign for children in the care system. And what it's there to do is to bring an awareness of what goes on for these young people when they're in care, to understand what it's like living with, working in schools with kids that come from the care system, or actually for parents to think about opportunity of fostering some of these young children. It's an opportunity to get that message out there.
And from the summit, what are you hoping to achieve?
It's a call to arms to stop what is happening out there in terms of these young children being invisible, not being heard. It's about improving the service, good practice and knowledge, bringing the 4 nations together so that they can collaborate, because currently in silos and it's not working. We need to be able to make change. The biggest single thing is bringing change to these young children and holding people to account for what they say they should do and what needs to be done. So it's really about rejuvenation and improving the care systems and our young children's life outcomes, and bringing the change for the young people, that what they need to build a proper foundation and a future, to break that cycle, basically, so that when they have a family, it's not like the history will repeat itself, and that they've got a proper future ahead of them.
And as you said earlier, children are our future, so it's ultimately what we can do to support others at this moment in time.
Yeah.
I've heard you before talk about your values of curiosity, compassion, obviously competition as well. How has this integrated and guided your journey and I guess also your mission for Fatima's UK campaign?
I've always stood by my beliefs and values. Auntie Ray helped me to create those. And I don't go far wrong. I stay close to what I believe and what I value. And I always lean into curiosity, asking the why. And it's great learning about what it is that makes you want to do what you do and who you are, and the self-growth in all of the experiences that we go through. Even with being an Olympic and world and European champion, the whole point is from humble beginnings to the highest top successful international athlete that I was. That journey taught me a huge amount. So it wasn't just the end destination where I'd arrive with the medals that I won. It was the actual experience of self-growth and what I took away from that and how much more capable I am, and being able to use that to turn around and recognize that these young people with a little bit of hope, they can do the same, put them on the unstoppable pathway to reaching their goals too.
Looking back on your journey, what are you most proud of?
I'm just super proud that I'm able to have the strength of character and not be put off, because sometimes you get a bit pushed back to try and bring change for the care system sector, because I would want to leave a legacy and I want to make a difference to these young people's lives, and I want to be able to help future generations to come, because I have seen time and time again different governments come and go, kicking that same tin can down the road and nothing's changed. Here's where change is going to come, and it's coming very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. I guess like we're coming to an end now. I just want to close out with a couple of more questions, if that's okay. Firstly, the future goals. What are your future goals above and beyond Fatima's UK campaign? I know when we started the conversation, we talked about training. What are the future goals?
Love a challenge, so I'll always continue to do my challenges. My future goals are to, with regard to Fatima's UK campaign, is to make sure that we continue to create history and rejuvenate the care system and bring in those collaborations together so people work together, the agencies, organisations, the decision makers, and people start to influence by collaboration government change of policy as well, where these decisions are made for our young people. But on a personal level, I'm content within myself and I'm grateful for having had the life that I've had. Because when I look back, people say to me, would you ever change anything? And I'll say, maybe a couple of things, but otherwise no, because the fact is, who and what I've become is now something that is influencing, changing for our young people, ultimately through Fatima's UK campaign. Without the experience and the knowledge that I've gathered over the years, having been in the care system, knowing what it's truly like for these young people, having experienced it, it can only be that somebody who's been involved at that level truly understands the gravity of it all and has the motivation and drive to take that challenge on and elevate it to where it needs to be. It's often been said to me in the short space of time and the traction that we've received, the very many doors that I've opened and the people that I've got aboard. I've got no ministerial position. What I have got is my lived experience and my Olympic platform. And because people listen to me, I'm grateful for that, because I'm making that difference that what our children need, young people.
Definitely. And Fatima, I could listen to you all day. It's been an absolute pleasure. To close out, what would your key thoughts and takeaways be for our audience?
For the audience, I would say, think about what it is that you can do to make a difference to anybody's life. Community is really important. Building a good community is so important. People tend to work on their own agendas and they get stuck in their own areas and they don't communicate, and then they suddenly realise actually they're missing out tremendously. And the overall picture is that we're all in it together, we're all here together. And if you've got something you can share to improve somebody else and make somebody else's life that little bit easier or a little bit happier by just speaking or smiling to somebody, why wouldn't you do that? That's my message to you out there. Think about that. Do something not just for yourself, but for others too. And try to think about the community in which you live and build support. When you've looked after your family and your friends, think about your neighbours and people around you as well.
And how can our audience stay up to date and get involved with the work of Fatima's UK campaign?
If you really want to help me to make that difference to help our young people, go on fatimascampaign.com and you can give generously in support. And we do programs with the Football League and obviously the Power of Sport, Arts and Technology. And for a child to do once a week a program, it's £20, and for a year is £1,000. So we're constantly looking of new ways to fundraise, and like all charities, everybody's fighting for the same. It's difficult to get people to help. But if you're looking to do something, set yourself a challenge, something that you'd like to do, but fundraise and do it for Fatima's UK campaign, or something that you yourself believe in or that means something to you, whether you've had a loved one that suffered with cancer or Alzheimer's. There are so many good charities out there, smaller charities that are struggling to survive. They're finding it hard to get the funding. Help them to carry on the good work that they are doing, because most funds go to bigger charities and it doesn't filter out at all. Don't keep putting into the bigger areas. Think about your own community and how you can help raise some funds to help very needy people in your own community and the good work that these charities do for them. Otherwise, eventually they're all going to fold up and then we'll be in a mess.
Fatima, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me anyway, Pete.